Thank you.
Okay, it's time. Oh, Jumbo fellow adventurers, and welcome to the 21-day writing journey with me, your co-host Mike Dooley, joined by none other than
Hope Koppelman.
Hope is in the house, and so are you. Thanks for being with us in the United States right now, North America. It is Labor Day. It is a national holiday. But we are here because we love what we do. To refresh your memory, I'm the guy who writes to live. I write to teach, and I write to make a living. Hope, in a very complementary way, if I may say so myself, particularly for the purposes of this course, lives to write. It is her expression, her dance with life, the way she taps into source energy and just comes alive. It brings her clarity, peace of mind, and books come from it as well. So these two perspectives are meant to take you through this 21-day journey so that you can be writing for whatever reason suits you. Whether you want to write a book, or you want to discover your power, or you want to do a little bit of both, you want to do some journaling. There are so many gifts to writing. We never stop counting our own, Hope and I. And we look forward to hearing from you, to continue hearing from you, that it is the exact same thing. And speaking of hearing from you, oh my gosh, you have been blowing up the Facebook page, and it fills our hearts with joy. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for posting. Thanks for the confirmation that we're on the right path. We're here for you, and we take note of all of the constructive comments that we receive. With almost 9,000 people in this journey, we just simply cannot get to every single one. But know that we're doing our best, and boy, can we feel your energy and your spirit. I want to take this moment to remind you all as well, and this is really critical. These are weird times that we're in. Do not feel a compulsion to keep up and write every day and stay on top of this as you're dealing with all kinds of other things in your life at this moment. The whole idea of this course, particularly with the 4 workshops being recorded, is that you can do it at your own pace, at your own time. There is no wrong, there is no right. You can revisit workshops, you can stall them and delay them, you can take a day off, a week off. There's nobody gonna give you a grade on this other than yourself. And if you do it at your own pace, you're gonna have a lot more fun, and you're gonna give yourself a much higher grade and find many, many more gifts. So keep that in mind, all right? I also wonder how did it go with the homework and the writing practices we gave you last week? Did you remember your dreams? Did you write them down? I loved what Hope said about, whether you write them down or not. What do you recall feeling in the moments you awoke? And that was always clear for me every day since our last workshop. I had a certain feeling, a certain sense, a certain optimism, a certain question on my mind because of that exercise. Let me remind you also of what Sept says. Sept was dictated by the late Jane Roberts about dreams at night. He said, you all, human beings, you all dream at night. It has no relevance whatsoever if you remember those dreams. So don't beat yourself up if you don't remember your dreams. In Sept's words, the work was done. Our dreams are a place for therapy. Our dreams are a place for joy. Our dreams are a place for working out issues. And the work is done, whether you remember it or not. But by putting a pen and journal by the bed every night and having the intention of remembering how you feel in the morning, chances are great that that box will be checked for you and enhanced beyond the normal work that's done in a dream. I'm also curious if you did your dialogue with yourself, as I have found, reveals lots of insights to Mike Dooley. Through the written dialogue, I ask myself a question, answer a question, taken from the style and manner described by Neil Donald Walsh. I hope that went well for you. If you didn't do it yet, there's still time to do it. Chill on all of these. Okay, so let's begin today's workshop. We don't have all that protocol that we had last week. We're going to dive right in. We fully expect there will be time for your questions and our answers. We've already received a lot of questions in advance, and so they're standing by, and we hope to answer some live questions for those of you watching live right now. We aim for about an hour-long workshop, and if we go over for Q&A, then that will be great as well. So that you can pace yourself. So we're going to explore the writing processes today, and Hope not only is one of the most passionate writers I've ever known in my life, but she has a really high regard for the process. So before I dive headlong into mine, I'd really love for you to set this up for us, Hope, your view and your respect of the process.
Yeah, sure. I've always loved the symbolism of mandalas. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with mandalas, but I think it's a really beautiful process where Tibetan monks will spend days, sometimes weeks or months, constructing a single mandala or sand painting. And they'll apply millions of grains of tiny sand using tubes and funnels and scrapers. And they'll make this absolutely magnificent, intricate design. And then at the very end of it, they wash the whole thing clean and they start over again. And they do that because they're not attached to the end result. They're not attached to the finished product that they create. Instead, they see the process of constructing it as a path to enlightenment. Not the finished product, but the process. And I've always felt that was really beautiful. And I've always felt the same way for myself about writing. That for me, I've considered myself a process writer because I believe that the greatest gifts that writing offers us lie in the process. And it's not to say that I don't want to write books and I don't want to teach about writing, because I do. That's very important to me too. It's just to say that I think that the gifts that come to us through the process, gifts of insight and clarity and healing and peace and hope, are just like so grand and so great. So I always see the process as being first and foremost. And there's a quote by Harper Lee, who wrote To Kill a Mockingbird, and she says, "Any writer worth his salt writes to please himself. It is a self-exploratory operation that is endless." And I feel that way about writing. I think that there is always deeper that we can go. And the deeper that we go, the deeper we realize that there is to go. And one more thing I would say about process is I would encourage anybody who wants to be a writer, anybody who wants to spend their life writing, to fall in love with all of it. Fall in love with the entire process. So fall in love with the good days when writing comes easily and you feel inspired and you feel in the flow. And also fall in love with the bad days where you don't write and where you don't feel inspired and perhaps you feel challenged or blocked, because all of that is part of the process. I don't know any writer or any artist who creates every single day of their life. I think that the road is much more often like this, or maybe like this. So I think that if we can fall in love with all of it, then I think we have what it takes to spend a lifetime writing. What about you, Mike? What are your thoughts about the process? What are your processes?
Yeah, I really like this part. Excuse me. Well, I notice things in hindsight, and I've come up with a process that I kind of revere and really love in hindsight. But I can remember in the beginning it didn't exist, which makes it all the much more appreciated now. In the beginning, as I shared with you last week, I came at writing reluctantly and without a desire, really, other than thinking I would write a book when I grew up one day, and that never happening. Yeah, I was happy to be the accountant in the back room and let my brother do the T-shirt designs until that one fateful time. And that one fateful time when I wrote the little dolphin poem that so blew my little mind, I was in awe that something happened that I had never experienced before. But I wasn't really aware of what it was. In hindsight, it's easy, and I'm going to go there with you in just a moment. But I fumbled through different T-shirt sayings and slogans for about 10 years prior to the year 2000 dawning, at which point, really, I became a writer every day, sending out messages from Mike. Excuse moi. And those were little Monday morning motivators. They were Friday fortunes, I called them. They were little messages from Mike. And it wasn't until 10 months into writing a daily email that I had this overwhelming feeling that increased ever more, that I ought to write from the perspective of the universe, that I ought to say, from on high, the rules of the game, the nature of reality, that we're pushed on to greatness. And it wasn't until I surrendered to that voice, and it wasn't an audible voice. It was really more of surrender to that idea of taking on a different persona. So it was not in the mindset of channeling, that I all of a sudden tapped into something very powerful. Up until that point, I would write as Mike, which would mean fully planted in the left hemisphere of my brain, a recovering certified public accountant, really dry, really mundane, trying to talk about the power of our thoughts, not a story connected to my writing, not anything. I would methodically hammer out each sentence and then each paragraph. I have to cough one more time. And of course, I didn't mute properly. Sorry. So when I surrendered to this idea of writing as the universe, which to me was just Mike writing from a different persona, it was the first time I resigned myself to not knowing what I would write about. Meaning, instead of saying, today I'm going to write about gratitude, today I'm going to write about appreciation, today I'm going to write about going within, today I'm going to write about life's magic. It's like, this is the first line of the first note from the universe I ever wrote. Your attention, please. Your attention, please. This is the universe. And I had zero idea of what would come next. I was just like, okay, do it, but don't take yourself too seriously. Be a little bit playful. And so I wrote, your attention, please, your attention, please. This is the universe. And then I was like, dang, what comes next? Well, what would come next after that? What would come next after you teach thoughts become things? What would come next when you realize you're not alone in the world and that everything counts? I wrote the next sentence, deleted it, wrote two more, edited it, copy, paste, curse. And gently and gradually over hours, the first note from the universe came out. And in hindsight, it was like holy mackerel. I'm going to share it with you right now. Thank you for your indulgence. Your attention, please. Your attention, please. This is the universe. Today, I'll be recording your every thought and emotion, no matter how good or bad, no matter how generous or stingy, and no matter how helpful or hurtful they may be. And everything I record will be played back for you as soon as possible as some type of physical manifestation in time and space. Thank you. That is all. The universe. And I was like, dang, I did it. And I didn't even know where it was coming from. I didn't know where it was going to. And something really critical happened. Several things. Let me break it down for you right now, because this has become my go-to process. It begins with intention. Remember the story last week I shared with you? I camped out on my back porch and said, Mike, you're not going into the house until you have a hook for this boring book, The Time-Space Continuum. And after an hour or so of being prepared to stay there until the sun set, I suddenly kind of struck gold and had to run into the house with, not all that long ago, in the nether reaches of ad infinitum, there formed a council of fearless explorers, blah, blah, blah. Same thing with every note from the universe I write. And now, having written 17 books, it's the same thing at every writing session. It's the same thing, big picture, before I even begin a book. I have the intention, and I clarify that intention for books with a different process I'll be sharing with you shortly. But for a note from the universe, I have this intention, I have surrender, like whatever the heck comes out. Like Hope said last week, do not be critical. It's like one of your two responsibilities. Allow it to come forward. Do not be holding on to the throttle. Turn it up, turn it down. Just like let it come out. Now, after some of it comes out, you can delete it. You can curse. You can cut, edit, paste, splice, or whatever. But let there be that freedom of allowance that was prompted by the intention, and then followed by writing. You're not just going to sit there, obviously, and be thinking. You're going to be typing or doing longhand. So this whole process to me now is like identical to what I have spent 20 years on the road all over the world, 6 continents, teaching people about living deliberately, creating consciously. Thoughts become things. Create the picture of what you want in terms of the end result. What is intention but a single word that means end result? I intend to write a book. I intend to write a note. I intend to be funny. I intend. The end result. That's what an intention is. That's the power of intention. It's the power of an end result. And what is an end result but a clearly defined vision absent of how you're going to get there? Absent. Whether you want to manifest $1 million or a soulmate or a travel partner or a note from the universe or the book that you've been wanting to write, don't dictate how. Of course you're going to write. Of course you're going to show up. Of course you're going to go out in the world with that intention, that vision, that end result all the time. But surrender the hows. Surrender. Today will be gratitude day. Today, get your left brain out of there. There's a place for the left brain. Well, I'm sure that's going to come up in a little bit. But for me, this is thoughts becoming things, and I teach it the world over through using the digital GPS analogy. When you're in your car or you're walking through a busy downtown city, you've got your GPS going on. What's the first thing you have to do for you to have an adventure through abundance or a storyline, characters and a plot, nonfiction, self-improvement that's going to ring bells for your readers? What's the first thing you have to do when you're GPS guided? Tell the system not where you are, not how you're going to go down the streets, but the end result, the intention, the destination. Even though you don't know how you're going to get there, you tell it the destination. And so for me, the destination of an end result, the destination of a note from the universe, that feeling of euphoria that I had come to know so well before I had named it as a processes. That feeling of euphoria that I know when I think I've written a really good one. And it's like, woohoo, about time. Took 6 hours, damn it. But inevitably, it will just be like this, yes. And I might even laugh out loud because sometimes the notes are a little bit humorous. And I'll be like, I get to be the first one to laugh. How cool is that? I love my life. I love my job. I love writing these notes from the universe. That's what I go through when I write a good one. And so I realize now in hindsight, the power of intention, a crystal clear end result for me is exactly that feeling. It's all about the feeling. It's not about the words, it's not about the topic, it's not about my computer. It's about, woo, I love it. Thank you, God. So when I sit down to write a note from the universe, I set my timer on my smartphone and I just go into a 1 minute, woo, I love it. I love what I just wrote. I love my life. It's so easy. This is the best note. People are going to laugh. I can't wait to read the replies. Oh my God. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, universe, whatever. This is confidential. I wouldn't share this with the public. They would probably put me in the insane asylum, but I'm sharing it with my writing friends on this journey. This is my secret. I go through a minute of joy, pretending I have just written the best note from the universe ever, even though I don't know what I'm going to write about. And it sets the bar really high. Okay. Can you imagine what step 2 is in your GPS guided car? No matter what it is you want, a good note from the universe or wealth and abundance. Put your car in gear. Because if your car stays in park, you're not going anywhere. If you don't do something about your dream, whether it's finding Romeo or writing a kick butt story, it will not get done. You cannot leave your car in park, and it won't matter if there's a vision board in the back seat. It won't matter if there's a gratitude rock in your pocket. Doesn't matter that the universe adores you and wants for you what you want for yourself, and your thoughts become things. You're not going anywhere. Your dream will never come true unless you put your car in gear. So move towards Romeo, move towards a new home, move towards writing that piece that's going to make you go, woohoo, just your best attempt to move in the general direction of your dreams. The instant you begin moving in your car, guidance is forthcoming. Make a legal U-turn. Go straight 100 yards and turn left. Go south on A1A. But there's no guidance forthcoming if you're not in motion, moving towards Romeo or writing something. But I can't write. I don't know what I'm going to write about. Write any dang thing. Write that you love the color blue. Just write. Blue is so pretty because it comes in many shades. Has nothing to do with your dream or the story or rocking the world or whatever you wanted to mine in terms of gifts from your writing. Just write ending. I'm so glad nobody will ever know the kind of drivel I write after I come down from my 1 minute, like, woo, I love my life. I love it. I saw a bird feather floating through the sky. It's like, delete it. Okay. Do you ever want something to make your heart sing? Oh, that might be good. Did you ever find it sitting on the couch at home? That's not good. Do you see? I've set this bar high with this joy, the ultimate end result. And divine intelligence knows I will never feel that joy unless I write really well. So I need to start writing. The juices are flowing. I'm being tapped in and connected to my higher self. And then if you're Neil Donald Walsh, in moments, brilliance comes out. And if you're Mike Dooley, a few hours later, brilliance will come out and it'll be pieced in with, all the other garbage. And you're going to have to dissect and pull and copy and paste. But you will have summoned the magic with your high ideals and your emotional elation. And then by showing up, car in gear, going down the road, now you're reachable. Hey, tweak over here, go over there, do this. So you're going to feel your inner mechanism steering, trying to take you here, trying to take you there, because it knows based on your destination of elation what must come next. So I did say I would talk a teeny bit about logic. There is a place for logic. I found that surrendering to spirit and to heart is where the bulk of my material comes from. But I've always believed, and I teach in other realms of living deliberately, that using a little bit of logic, not a lot, it's overrated, but a little bit of logic stirs the pot of magic. It's like, I need another voice here. That's not surprising enough. If I came from this angle, if I wrote as the universe, logic is priceless, but just don't let it hijack the ship of your writing dreams, okay? Use it sparingly. If you get stuck or if you have so-called writer's block, just get a little logical. What would be another angle here? Okay. What would be another way to approach it? And suddenly you're under sail and it's like, oh, this is coming easy. And then And then the best part of writing a note from the universe is the end, when I have an authentic, woo, I love my life. Okay, so that is the GPS navigation that I have learned to do from GPS navigation for deliberate living applied to a writing process in the moment. I do it before writing a book as well. So now let me share with you how I do it when it comes to writing a book. Very, 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 very similar, but I have an extra exercise in here for you. So it's like, if you aren't in front of a book, maybe you've already started or you've already got an idea, that's perfectly fine. But with that idea in mind, okay, loosen up the constraints if that's possible. And not right now, but I want you to have a moment in the days that follow where you just fill yourself with elation and joy that it is already done. That it is already written, it's already edited, it's already at the printers, it's already on Amazon, it's already got 5-star reviews, and you're just, for a couple of minutes, just go there and kind of set that bar for that book. And you're going to do that for every writing process, and then it'll be followed up by writing. But here's the other thing that I wanted to impart today with you, and that is the process I follow for titles. Titles, chapters, subtitles, and topics within a chapter. Again, I am totally into thoughts become things based on intention, which is based on the end result. And I was invited to do a joint venture 20 years ago to be released as an audio program. I mentioned that lightly last week. And we both knew we needed to come up with a kick-butt title for a nonfiction audio program. And I had heard from Mark LeBlanc, a professional speaker and author. You can look him up out of La Jolla, California, Mark LeBlanc. And he said that when it comes to titling your entrepreneurial business or titling a book, write down 50 possible titles. If you already have an amazing title, write down 50 more. Just do this exercise. It is solid gold. You will shock yourself. Particularly do this exercise after that 1 minute or 2 minute, setting the bar really high. Now, what kind of title is going to live up to you being that joyful? And don't logically get in your own way thinking, well, I really like the title I have. Well, you can keep that title. We're not taking it off the table. But I want you to stoke the flames and come up. You're going to get probably 20 crappy titles, just possibly. And then you're going to have some real sparks. And then you can be like, well, that's enough. I've done 33. Go to 50 or more. By the time you hit 50, you're going to have a whole different palette of choices before you that you cannot imagine when you're at 33. Just believe me, 17 books never fails. So write down 50 titles and keep going for gold. Like, what would be evocative? What would be mysterious? What would be promising? What would be crystal clear? And then 50 subtitles. Okay. And you don't match them up until a week from now or a month from now or later on. This is my process. There are other ways to do this. You don't have to follow my process, either in writing or coming up with the title of the book. But for the reasons given, it works for me, and I highly recommend it. So 50 subtitles with your 50 titles, and then you play mix and match all week long. You show them to your friends, you show them to your partner, you show them to whoever. And I would bet at the end of a week, there's going to be one title and one subtitle that you're just like, OMG, that is so amazing. And this is what I came up with: Infinite Possibilities, the Art of Living Your Dreams. And they were not together. In fact, it was my partner at the time who matched them, and then he quit the project, so it was mine alone. But I had come up with them, thank goodness, and he hadn't. He just matched them. Infinite Possibilities, the Art of Living Your Dreams. That's one heck of a title. that your book has to live up to, and your title will be the same. And that was one of the best gifts I could have ever given myself, because it didn't let me cop out. So I was just like, okay, Mike, you got to get that bar. You've got to produce a book that lives up to Infinite Possibilities, the art of living your dream. Like, who are you? Who are you in the dark night of your soul to be writing this and telling other people how to live the life of their dreams? I was always afraid that people would be like would know a little bit too much about me, and that it wouldn't be that, wouldn't serve my credentials at the time to be the guy talking about the art of living your dreams. But then I would console myself. I would say, it's okay, Mike. You're living your greatest dream right now. You deserve to write this book. And so I then had to come up with 12 titles, because there was going to be 12 installments that would each live up to and fill in all the blanks for that title. Well, I'd have to talk about thoughts becoming things. Bong, there's one. I have to talk about beliefs. There's another title. I have to talk about intuition. I have to talk about the magical universe. I have to talk about taking action. I have to talk about other people. So if that's your title, it's going to tell you, working backwards from the end result, just like GPS works backwards to give you the left and the right-hand turn. It's going to tell you what chapters you have to have. And then once you got the chapters, you're going to know, if I'm going to talk about thoughts become things, I have to talk about visualization and meditation and daydreaming and every kind of thought there is, and guidelines for each. Do you see the end? Just like in GPS driving, the end tells you the way you're going to get there. It dictates and forces the hows. You don't do it from your starting point. The end does it and works backwards, whether it's abundance you want, friendship you want, health you want, or a book or writing you want. The end will dictate the means, the hows. You just need to receive. And so that's how I have done every single book. The end being the title dictates the chapters. The chapters dictate the sub topics within a chapter. And then there you have it. Bob is your uncle. Two more things I want to share in my processes. Demand awesome. I used to write the notes back when there was less than 1,000 people getting them. There was like nobody getting them compared to like nearly 1 million now. But I would write as if 1 million were reading them. And I would never let myself stop until I was like, woohoo, I love this job. And sometimes it would take a day. Sometimes the next day I'd still be writing the last day's note. And I know that Hope is that kind of a writer. She said that she wrote, and she's a stylist, and she spent 500 times going back in and making the gifts of writing even better. And it pays big dividends. You're going to be your toughest critic, and so you should be. So listen to that critic, which doesn't mean you have to adore everything. When I wrote each recording for Infinite Possibilities, I thought they all sucked. I may have shared that last week. But then I thought the next one will be better. But I had a deadline, and people had paid their money, and I wasn't going to refund them. So I sent them out, and then people said, that was awesome. That was awesome. But when it comes to writing a book and having more time, I am much stricter with myself in making sure that it's as good as I wanted it and believed it could be. The last thing, very quickly, having a deadline helps more than almost anything, probably more valuable than talent, because otherwise you're going to be a writer like so many writers who just thinks it's not good enough forever. And it is good enough. It was good enough. You're not going to slop it out there. You're going to be a tough critic. You're going to be fair and reasonable with yourself, but nothing's going to help you more than a deadline. When it came to the Infinite Possibilities audio program, I pre-sold it, and everybody knew it was pre-sold. I wasn't being tricky, but I had to get it out. And if I didn't have that deadline, I never would have been happy enough with that first book to actually release it. And if you don't have somebody giving you a deadline, then just try to come up with your own with friends and peers and have them hold you accountable, or be part of a writing group that helps you be held accountable, and come up with a deadline. Like back then, mine was like December 1 and it was January. So I knew that it would take about 3 weeks to do each recording. So I worked backwards from the deadline, And then I put in a few buffer days and a buffer vacation, and I calculated on a calendar, very logical left brain, exactly where I would have to be with each chapter as the year progressed. And that was something I clung to so fiercely because it was my guiding light, particularly having a program people had prepaid for. That book, incidentally, that audio program came out as a book 7 years later and was a New York Times bestseller. So it worked for me. I think it'll work for you. We all find our own ways and our own adaptations. Hope, I want to bring you on. I think there's 4 minutes left in the hour. Sorry for tirade, but Hope has her own processes, and I'm going to give the microphone to Hope now. Thank you, everybody, for your indulgence.
Thank you, Mike. That was awesome. Yeah, I will share my processes with you as well. I have two different ones that I'll share. I have a weekday writing process, and then I have a weekend writing process. But I'll just preface that by saying that I believe that there are seasons for writing. And I think that there are times where we write every day or nearly every day. And then I think that there are times where we might not write for a year. And then there are times where maybe it's sporadic and it's sort of hit or miss. So last week I mentioned that it took me 7 years to write The Gifts of Writing, but that was not 7 years writing every day. That was, a couple of months of maybe writing every day or writing nearly every day. And then a couple of months where I wasn't writing at all, or I was sort of sporadic about it. I think there was a period of time during all of that where I didn't write at all for 6 months or 9 months, and then I returned to it. So it was a process of coming and going over the course of those 7 years. And I think that's really important to acknowledge that we're always changing. And I think we have to give our writing processes permission to change along with us. So I try to be disciplined, but not rigid. And I think that if you were to ask me a year ago what my writing process looked like, it would be very different than what my writing process looks like today. And I imagine the same thing if you were to ask me a year from now. I expect that it will be totally different than it is today. So I will tell you guys, I guess I'll start with my writing process during the week, because obviously I work full-time with Tut. So I don't have the ability to write for 6 hours a day during the week. So what I have found works for me during the week is that I take writing walks. And first thing when I wake up every morning, before I even drink a glass of water or take a shower, I reach for this little notebook, and I put on my shoes and I go outside and I walk through the forest to the woods behind my house. And my sole intention is not to write. My intention is to be fully present with the world around me and to make myself available to receive. So I do that by focusing on quieting my thoughts, not thinking about what happened yesterday or what I need to do later in the day. And I do that by focusing on being present in the moment, listening, observing, being aware, taking notice of what's around me. And if I feel inspired to write, then I write. If something comes to me, anything at all, I write it down. And if nothing comes to me, then that's totally fine. I don't have any expectations. I'm just there to listen and observe and make myself available. So I found that there's something to writing when you're very relaxed that allows the words to flow more easily, as opposed to sometimes when I'm sitting in front of the computer and I feel like, okay, I'm here to write. And it can create sort of this feeling of pressure or expectation that that's what I'm there to do, so I better do it. It's almost like when you're driving, and sometimes it can be easier for you to gather your thoughts when you're driving because you're focusing on the road ahead of you and you're not focusing on trying to figure out what's going on in your life. But as a result of focusing on the road in front of you, the thoughts just sort of tend to flow more freely. So this is true for me when I'm walking and I go on these writing walks, is I focus on writing and I just allow the thoughts, insights, anything that comes to me to flow more easily. And I think that this time of solitude, quiet, inner stillness, I like to call it going deeply into the quiet of ourselves. I think that this time is really important for a writer's practice. So I think of this time of solitude as being sort of the foundation of my writing practice. And I think of it sometimes as planting seeds. And it might not be the real hard work of writing a book or something, but I think it's planting seeds for a garden to later grow. So that's something that I usually do, or I always do it every morning. First thing when I wake up, I usually take a writing walk in the afternoon on my lunch break, and sometimes in the evening. So usually 2 to 3 times a day. Each walk is anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And that's how I connect to writing during the week. And then during the weekend, my writing process is very different because I have more time and more space in my day to write. So I love to write in the mornings. I think that the mornings is a really sacred time. It's when things are slower and softer, and I feel like we don't have this to-do list that has been growing longer with every hour of the day. We're still sort of clear and connected to our intuitive subconscious. And so I think the morning is a really sacred time to write. So during the weekends, I will wake up and I will usually take a shower, brush my teeth because I want to get those waking things out of the way. And then I open up all the windows and all the blinds and I let light in. And I feel like it's almost an intention, even though it's not so directly stated. It's like a unspoken intention that I am making the space to write. And then after that, I go into the kitchen and I make a maca latte because that is my favorite drink. I have been drinking every morning for the past 8 years or something. I'm a little bit obsessed and I always have that with me when I write. And I've shared the recipe with all of you below. So if you want to try it, the recipe should be directly below this video. And there's actually a study that shows that if you want to create a new habit like writing, if you can link it to a habit that you've already created, that you'll be more likely to stick with it. So if you drink coffee every morning anyway, and you want to create a writing practice, if you can link it together with drinking coffee, so those two things always go hand in hand, then you'll be more likely to stick with it. So after I make my maca latte, I then find my writing spot, sometimes at the computer, sometimes in the living room on my sofa, sometimes in the rocking chair on my back porch. And if I'm in the mode of editing, usually I'm on my living room rug and I have all of my pages laid out on the floor in front of me because I like to be able to touch it and feel it and see everything at a glance and work with it and move things around. And where I start writing is rarely where I finish. I like to move around, be in different places and just sort of feel how it is to write in different environments. So it's usually different. Where I start is different than where I finish each day. Let's see. So once I get into my writing place, once I'm there, then from that point on, it's sort of a complete turning over like we spoke about during the first writing workshop. From that point on, I really surrender. I surrender to the magic. I might have a general idea of what I want to work on. So if I'm working on a book at that time, I know that I'm returning to pick up where I left off and work on that book. but I never have any idea of exactly what I'm going to write or exactly where it's going to lead me. That's the point that I just put one word in front of the next, and I trust that the magic will guide me where I need to go. And I found that it's almost like headlights when you're driving at night. Two driving analogies in this workshop, but where you can only see maybe 10 to 15 feet in front of you. But that's enough. You don't have to see more than the next step in front of you when you're writing to trust that that's enough, and that will get you all the way to where you need to go. So turn it over, allow the magic to work from that point forward once you've shown up to it. And so I usually write for maybe 6 hours a day, but it's always changing. It really depends on if my writing muscle is strong or not, where I am at that particular time. I do believe that writing is a muscle. I think that it's a muscle that we have to strengthen and develop. And I always know when my writing muscle is weak because I'm easily distracted. You know, I will pick up my phone and respond to a text, or I'll think, my dad called yesterday and I forgot to call him back, so I better just take a break and call him back. Or the mail guy comes and he delivers my mail and I think, oh, I gotta go check the mail. Or I should make a smoothie. A smoothie would help me focus. So I always know when it's weak, and I also always know when it's strong. When it's strong, my phone can go off and I don't respond to it. I can get a phone call, I don't answer it. Someone knocks at the front door, I don't care. My stomach growls, I don't want to eat. You know, we start to recognize when the writing muscle is strong. And it's not just writing that strengthens the muscle. I think that's a really important thing for all writers to know. There are other things that strengthen the muscle of writing. So I think solitude, having time to be alone with our own thoughts and insights, is really important to strengthening the writing muscle. Time for solitude. I think reading books by authors that we love is a great way to strengthen the muscle. I think being in conversation with other writers, like this group, like what we're doing, is a great way to strengthen the muscle. Yeah, I think that there are so many different ways: listening, observing, being aware, practicing beginner's mind, jotting down little notes and ideas in our little notebooks when we're just out and about throughout the day. All of these things strengthen the writing muscle. And I will say that I think when the writing muscle is really strong, when we're really attuned, that I think the work will come to us in really unusual, unexpected, magical ways, because it knows that we are ready for it. And there's this beautiful story about the poet Ruth Stone. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Ruth Stone, but if you've read the book Big Magic, then you might have heard this before. She used to be working out in the fields in Virginia, and she said that she would feel a poem thundering toward her over the horizon. And the moment that she felt a poem thundering toward her, she would race like hell to get home. And sometimes she would get home just in time to write it. And she would feel this poem like thundering through her, and she would be able to write it down. And other times she would be too slow, and she would feel this poem coming through her, but by the time she got home and she got to her pen and her notebook, it was already gone, and it would already have moved on to some other poet somewhere else. And sometimes, she says, she would get home just in time to catch the tail end of it. And in those times, she would catch the tail end of it and she would reel it back into herself. And she would write the entire poem from the last line backward to the first line. So I think that there are times that the magic can really reach us in these like incredible, unexpected ways if we are attuned to it. I guarantee that her writing muscle was strong. She was attuned to listening and observing and being aware so that she could recognize when this poem came thundering toward her. So I think all of us can do that. All of us will begin to see that and sense that as our writing muscles become stronger, that it really finds us in like the most magnificent ways. So Mike, to bring you back in, are you there?
Yes, I am. What a great story. What a great job, Hope. Thank you so much. And I've heard you tell that story about Ruth before. And I know in one of the renditions when you shared it with me, that actually happens for you sometimes, right? You can actually, I mean, if you, everybody listening now, what Hope said was this lady Ruth, and Hope does it as well, can sometimes catch a thought that had already processed in her mind and pull it back, and will find themselves sitting at the computer writing the sentence word for word backwards.
Yes,
That
writing
is
the
not
whole
normal,
poem.
Hope. That is so the whole thing. And then the next sentence, and then they will reconstruct, and then you have to parse it, I suppose, with your mind and rewrite it so that you can read it forward instead of backwards. Is that right, Hope?
Well, the times that I have done it, I actually did it before finding Ruth Stone's story. And it had only happened a few times. But when I found her story, I was like so amazed that somebody else had experienced this, and not only experienced it, but put it into the most beautiful words. If you all Google after this is over, Ruth Stone, I think you could put "catch a poem by the tail." You should find it. And she explains it so beautifully. So yes, the times that it happened to me, and it's only a handful, it would come through me like so quickly that I couldn't keep up with it. And so I would just have to start with the last thing that I could remember that had come to me, and then sort of hope that I would be able to connect the dot to the thing that had come before that, and then hope I could connect the dot to the thing that came before that, literally writing it from the back, from the very last sentence up to the front.
I think that so evidences that like thoughts are things, and they're very, very real, and that we literally use our biological instrument to channel everything. And it can even be channeling a thought that may have existed independent of us in such a case or not. And I would then further connect the dot, similar to the dots we were connecting at the first workshop, that, you know, if you channel once, you channel all the time. If one thing's channeled, everything's channeled. It's just different degrees. I find that story kind of mind-blowing and very mind-expanding and quite exciting, because even though I don't have that experience, I've never had it, I know that I am, in the same way, a channel. And thereby, all the pressure of having to logically come up with something is gone. It's like, set the intention, create the space, and prepare to be astounded. So I'm so glad you shared that story. Again, great job, Hope. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, I want to tell everybody some really, really good news. I don't want to make Hope embarrassed, but her book, The Gifts of Writing, is now available at Amazon in paperback. Some of you have asked if there's more than an ebook. It is brand new available. And yesterday it was the number one best-selling in a category called authorship reference. But you know, hey, a category is a category, and Hope is an Amazon number one best-selling author. And so kudos and huge congratulations, Hope. Your thoughts become things. The link, if you're curious, by the way, all of the daily prompts that are prefaced with this beautiful writing about, the journey of writing, those are all from Hope's book, The Gifts of Writing. There's 200 total such passages in her book. There's only 21 that we're able to share during this writing journey. So the link is below this video. If you're watching this video in the Tut dashboard, many of you have clicked through to YouTube and you're watching it at YouTube, which is perfectly fine, but the link won't be there, and nor do those comments carry over like the comments that are now under the dashboard at tut.com. So thanks for your comments. Under that's the same place that you'll find the recipe Hope talked about. Under the video, you'll find the PDFs for today's workshop, and you'll find the link to Hope's book. And we have a brand new writing practice. Hope, tell them what your writing practice is going to be for this week and about the PDF that's now waiting for them.
Yes, so the writing practice that I am inviting you all to try this week is to take a writing walk. So I would encourage you to take a little notebook with you, or you could even take a piece of paper that you just fold up and you put in your pocket. And go on a writing walk with the intention of being present with the world around you and making yourself available to receive. So don't have any expectations that you have to write. Focus instead on emptying your mind, on being present, on being aware, listening, observing, and if anything at all comes to you, write it down as you're walking. There's a poet, Wallace Stevens, I mentioned at some point, and he used to write on walks, and he used to say that he would match his steps to he would match his words to the rhythm of his steps, and I think that's really beautiful. I don't know if I do that, but anyway, just focus on being present, making yourself available to receive. And if for any reason you're not able to take a writing walk, then you can try this practice just sitting in a chair outside in nature and doing the exact same thing, just being present to your surroundings. Is there anything else? I think that's pretty much it. Think of it as planting seeds, think of it as like creating and cultivating and laying the foundation for your writing practice. You can try this once this week if you like. You can try it every day. My hope would be that this is something you can do for the rest of your life, because I found that it's something that I do every day, and it really sort of sustains me as a writer and my writing practice. So Mike, what about you? What do you want to share about yours?
Yeah, I have a PDF for everybody as well. And I'm sure by now you all did find last week's PDF. If not, every one of the 4 workshops has a few downloadable exercises. You can download and print them out, or you can download them to complete them on your computer screen. If you want to do the worksheets that way, you have to download them first, save them to your computer, and then you can fill in the blanks online. This week, my PDF is the 50 titles, 50 subtitle exercise that I shared with you. And I don't want to discourage you or force you or pry you away from any great title or subtitle you've already come up with. This is just a way to surprise yourself and maybe come up with something even more amazing. But in the end, like I said, we're not taking your existing title, if you have one, off of the table. I saw in some of the YouTube comments, because I only have access to those in this moment, somebody was asking about subtitles. Those are most common, of course, with nonfiction books. I'm not sure what you were asking. We're going to do Q&A in just a moment. But a subtitle is a way to not only get keywords into the title, but it is a way to bring clarity to the title so that people really know exactly what they're getting into. How to win friends and influence people, certain techniques for such and such and such and such, drawing off of a very famous title. The subtitle will kind of give more clarity to potential readers. And when it comes to nonfiction, that can be a buy or sell decision. So getting the title plus the subtitle right can be so valuable. So please do that exercise. See if you like it. And I think that brings us to our Q&A session for workshop number 2. We're exactly 1 hour into the program. So we will stay as long as we can to answer as many questions as possible, at least another 20 or 30 minutes. Let me read, Hope. Let me read a question for you, Hope. Okay. Some of these were sent in earlier. If you want to ask a question live, please do so. We do have people monitoring both YouTube and the TUT dashboard to take live questions. We have a lot of questions. We'll do our best. Hope, somebody asked, should I continue the writing practices from week 1 into week 2 after the workshop on 9/7? I will only have used the writing practice for 1 night.
Yes, it's entirely up to you. So the writing practices are meant to use whenever and however you want. So you can just do them once and see how they feel, or you can make them regular practices that you do on a consistent basis, like the writing walks, like I do with these writing walks. So I think just really experiment with it and find what fits you.
What was your practice last week, Hope?
Oh, last week, dream journaling.
Oh, dream journaling. Yeah. So, yeah, I concur with what Hope said. Do whatever feels right, but don't overload yourself. Nobody. If one of the practices just doesn't resonate with you, don't do it.
Yes.
A successful author has succeeded without taking this course or doing our practices. So you can do it your own way. We just want to maybe give a little inspiration and insight. Mm-hmm. Hope, do you have a question for me?
Is there another one, Ivy?
Yeah, I've got one here.
Let's see.
Oh, here we go. Ivy's got one up. Will you both include advice on how to market books, how to network effectively, and ways that people of a more introvert nature can get their books out there? Well, I'll answer that. Yes, we're going to be talking about getting published, if that's an interest of yours. We're going to be talking about it anyway. And we're also going to be talking about platform building, which is the big buzzword since the arrival of the internet. A lot of publishers don't want to take a chance anymore on new talent when anybody with an idea can kind of test it out on social media for free at their own expense. And when you find something sticks, you go to your publisher or a prospective publisher and say, I've got this manuscript and I've got 48 followers. Let's make a deal. So I'm gonna share what I know about both of those things. Hope will share as well. And those lie in workshop 3 and workshop 4. Okay, Hope you can read that.
Okay. In your experience, is it more important to write really regularly, daily, even if briefly, or to be really focused for a period of time on what you are writing, even if that happens less often? Great question. So in my opinion, I think it's more important to write consistently for smaller periods of time, because I feel like that puts us in touch with writing. It almost keeps the relationship strong. And I kind of think that if you just plan to write for a long extended period of time, but maybe it's less frequently, that might be harder to do if you have not been writing consistently, even just for 5 minutes a day, because your writing muscle isn't as strong. So I mentioned, like, when I show up to write on the weekends, if I haven't been writing consistently, I might not be able to write for 6 hours because my writing muscle is not strong at that time. So I would just try to write, even if just for a few minutes every few days, consistently. I used to bring a little notebook, again, with me to yoga classes, and I would write on the mat while I was stretching before the yoga class began. It was only 5 or 10 minutes, but it was a way of keeping myself in contact with it. Next question.
Yeah. Are there any bookshops around the world willing to hold copies of self-published works? Oh, I'm sure there are. I guess you're talking about consignment, but things have evolved so much beyond bookshops. With just a little bit of knowledge, the world is your oyster, and you can be selling on the internet. You can be selling from your Facebook page. You can be selling from Twitter or Instagram or TikTok. So I'm sure there are bookstores around the world that will take a consignment self-published book, but they're going to do it. Let me give you a couple of pointers here. They're going to do it with a business mind. And so they're going to be happy that you live local and that maybe you could do a book signing and a talk. They're going to be really critical of the appearance of the book, because I have seen a lot of self-published books that look self-published, and that's so unnecessary. So you need to, if you're going to self-publish, do it with a company that's got credibility, that's got a track record, that's going to help you lay it out, choose the font size, choose the margin size, do the layout, help you with the cover. So the bookstores that will take a self-published book on consignment are going to be looking for that. They're not going to want grandma's book in there that looks like she did it, with an IBM Selectric back in the 70s. And what else might they want? They're just going to look at it from a business perspective. So I would show up and say, hey, here I am. I got this book. It looks beautiful. It's on this topic that I love. It ties into current events, XYZ. And I would be delighted to do a little talk and book signing 1 hour this coming Saturday morning. What do you say? And they're going to size you up. Their one question is, are we going to sell this book or not? So that's how you can do it the old-fashioned way while embracing the internet. And you'll learn some tricks next week and the week after from us on that as well.
Okay, question. How do I combine visualization and writing together? Mike, this might be a good one for you since you speak so much about visualization, if you want to answer.
Sure. Well, I think the way I laid it out in the beginning, let's see, Akshay, I would suggest prior to putting pen to paper and prior to writing on your computer, just go into that zone of elation. The emotion is more important than the characters or the content of the book. In fact, do not visualize the characters of the content. It's just like, I wrote a book. The world loves it. I've never had so much fun. My life is a gift. I can't wait to share and pay it forward. I love my life. Thank you, God. Thank you, universe. Thank you, whoever. Get into that zone for a couple of minutes where you're just like happy dancing. Woohoo! And then, Akshay, start writing. Follow spirit. It might not be good, but it's the start. The floodgates will open. You'll be astounded. And you do this a little bit every day. You don't muscle yourself and make it arduous and I must do it and I have to. It's like, no, you're doing this because it's fun, because you love it, to make a difference, to change the world, and so you shall. Visualize before, not during. Okay. My word is my lightsaber. Oh, I love this. You are a wordsmith. I touch people with my words all the time. I just don't know what is blocking me from writing. I have all kinds of plans, yet I can't seem to begin anymore. Is it fear? Let's not dissect what might not even be a problem, because that would just make it a problem. Maybe you weren't ready. Maybe you were taking care of other things in your household, whether figuratively or physically. Maybe you had other priorities, and now you've taken this course. You've lined up your ducks. You're in that zone. You've heard some tips from me, from Hope. You're learning from the community. You are ready. There has not been a problem. You're going to begin with the end in mind. You're going to visualize, woohoo! Anybody can do that. Writer's block will not stop you with that. Anybody can write 50 titles, 50 subtitles. Okay. And then anybody can write 6 to 12 chapters to live up to that title. That's nonfiction. If it's fiction, what are the genres you love? What are the things in life you love? wrap a story around that, dabble, create, edit, delete, curse, dabble, start over, take a break, have some mocha latte, and just do it. Just do it. Don't argue for your limitations.
Okay, when completing a first draft, how important or not is it for me to edit and review it before turning it over to editing? Okay, so I think it's very important. Speaking as somebody who has been an editor for the past 15 years and also somebody who has an editor, I think it's very important that we learn to edit our work first and that we take it as far as we can go. I can't tell you how many times I've wished, when I was editing a book for somebody, that they had edited it themselves first, because I think it's so helpful when an author takes it as far as they can go before turning it over. You can get even more insights, greater insights from an editor once you go as far as you can go before turning it over. And I'll talk more about editing next week. I'm sort of excited to talk about my love of editing, which has not always been the case my whole life.
I think that's a great answer, Hope. And I'm not an editor, and I haven't been there, and in the way that Hope has. But I do know that as a writer, there's a tendency to be like, oh, let me just give this burden to somebody else who's going to really make it sing. I have generally, except for my first manuscript decades ago, refrained from doing that. And I'm always glad that I do. I always, like Hope just said, it's like something else in me kicks in when I see it with my own eyes after the whole thing's kind of been done. And I have a lot more clarity, and I can take it a lot farther. And I don't give my power away to an editor. I don't give my power away from myself in the same way. So I think that's critical. I'd love to better understand if getting a publishing deal makes you more credible as an author than if you self-publish through Amazon. Well, I think what matters most is you and your own mind. And I can tell you, as a self-published author, so before I even tell you that, yes, in the long run, yes, of course, it's way better. It's just like the expected thing. You write and somebody else publishes. That means a lot, but that should never stop anybody from writing. Nobody would publish me, so I published myself, and I continued building a platform, and I sold tens of thousands, tens and tens and tens and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of books or CDs or cassettes on my own, to such a degree with such proficiency. It was like, damn, if I get a publisher, I'm going to get a lot less money than as somebody self-published. And by the time I got going, and I had 8 self-published books, 3 volumes of Notes from the Universe, Lost in Space, some other ones, you forget your books. By the time I got to that degree, I had such a platform and such a base that I really didn't care if anybody thought self-publishing was beneath me. The reason that I finally did go publishing after The Secret came out, after my profile was raised, was while I would sacrifice a lot in profit margin. When you go with a good publisher who's established internationally with foreign right divisions and everything, they can sell so many more copies that you're going to make more money, even though you're getting a fraction of what you used to get. So if I was starting all over again, in the beginning, I'd want to be published. And then I would just self-publish. And then I would build my platform, and I'd make so much money, I wouldn't even want to be published, except that they could bring me even further into other territories around the world, into audiobooks, into things that I wasn't able to do as a one-man show back in the day.
I have written many pages for my book. How do I organize them and decide what goes where? Well, I mentioned earlier something that I love to do once I have written and this is what I did for the gifts of writing. I had all of these passages that I had written about the writing process, and I laid them out all over my living room floor, and I started to organize them, and I started to figure out what were the consistent underlying themes. And as I started to sort of piece these themes together, that started to give me clarity on what should my chapters be, how does all of this fit together. And just sort of slowly but surely, I was able to just sort of start grouping things together and making sense of things together. So I think looking at it on a computer can sometimes be very overwhelming because you can't see everything at a glance. So I don't like to admit that I print a lot, but I probably print more than I should admit. And I lay out my pages on the floor, and I like to feel very close to them. I like to be able to touch them. I like to be able to move them around so I can see, no, this doesn't go there. It needs to go here. There's something about it just being very tangible and touchable that I think can help us to envision and organize it better.
Did you just start writing notes from the universe, or did you think about it for weeks before you began? I thought about it for probably a couple of months. I first wrote as Mike, as I have shared, but they were not that popular. And I really had this this feeling welling up within me that I could say more, speak more profoundly, and have it be more impactful if instead of writing as Mike, who people don't know anyway, I could write as the universe. And it wasn't, okay, I will channel the universe, because I didn't even think of it as channeling then. It was just like, I've got this wisdom, but coming from a complete stranger, it sounds like I'm off my rocker. But if I speak as the universe, and immediately it was received exactly as my intuition had led me, that people would find it more impactful. Same stuff, but much more impactful to be receiving it from the universe. So, and here's a key lesson from that. It was about 10 months of writing as Mike, daily emails, that made possible the evolution and the testing of this wonky idea to write as the universe. Point being, do not wait around for that really killer great idea before putting pen to paper, because it'll probably never come. And if I had waited around and not written as Mike first, 10 months later, still on my couch, and I had this idea to write as the universe, I would have thought that was the stupidest, most ridiculous, lame brain idea of my entire life. And so I never would have done it. And I wouldn't have had, by then, a platform to try it out on. I just sent that first one on a Friday, and it was really fun to write, way more fun than writing from Mike. And the feedback was better than normal, which was a good thing. So it's like every Friday for like 4 or 5 months, that's when I did the notes, only on Fridays. They were like a Friday treat, a note from the universe. And finally the light went brighter. I was like, you ding dong. You prefer writing as the universe. People prefer reading you as the universe. Stop writing as Mike altogether. And that's when I began writing notes, every day, 5 days a week. Thanks for the question.
How do you know if you live to write or write to live? Well, I don't think you need to know. I think that Mike and I sort of put it in that context for this course just to sort of exemplify that we both have very different approaches, and that we wanted everybody to know that no matter where you were, if you're somebody who really wants to write books, or if you're somebody who doesn't have that desire and just loves the process of writing, that you could find something in this course that spoke to you. So as far as you knowing, I don't think it's very important. I think the most important thing is just to find your way into writing. And once you're in, I think you'll start to figure out if you want to write books, if you want to make writing something that you do for a living, or if you don't have that desire at all. And it might be something that changes. It might be that you start writing, like me, you start writing really for the love of it, and then it becomes natural that you want to write a book, or you want to teach about writing. So, yeah.
Great answer. Is a daily writing practice, even for just 10 minutes, the same as journaling? How will you know if I'm writing? How will I know if I'm writing or simply keeping a diary? Hope?
I think if you're writing, you're writing. I don't think it matters if you're, is it the same as journaling, or is it a diary? Or if you're writing, you're writing. A daily writing practice is a daily writing practice. And if I'm writing or simply keeping a diary, I don't know that there's any difference. When I take my little writing notebook on my walks with me, I'm writing whatever comes to me in the moment, just whatever thoughts I have about life, the world. That's writing to me. That could be considered a diary, or that could be considered journaling. It's very personal, but all of my writing is personal. I think even when we're writing a book, even when we're writing fiction, all of that is very personal. So in my mind, I see writing as being writing regardless of what we call it or where we do it.
How do I shut off, or at least not engage with, the internal critic whose voice can be quite distracting at times while I write? I think you should answer that one too, because I gotta write. I have something to say, and if my internal critic says that that's bad or that's murky, then I try to improve it. But it's never really rains on my parade or tells me I can't write. It's like I'm writing for a different reason than to please my inner critic kind of thing. It's like I need to teach and make money, and so shut up. I'll write a little different, but I don't get too bogged down in that.
Yeah, I would say I think that internal critic voice becomes softer the more you write. So it's almost like there's a correlation. The stronger your writing muscle, the weaker your internal critic. And it's not to say that it's not there or that I don't hear it, but I think that it speaks strongest when we're standing on the outside looking in. And once we're really deep in the flow, once our muscle is strong, then that voice might still be there, but I just think it speaks softer.
Very good. Somebody live has asked a question. This sounds familiar to Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. What parallels? I've had the great fortune of meeting Julia and presenting in a sister venue, and we got along great, although I haven't studied her or read her at all myself. So on my end of it, I don't have any parallels. Hope, I know that you're aware of Julia Cameron, the legend who wrote The Artist's Way. Any inspiration there?
I think that there are a lot of parallels between a lot of writers who write about writing. So I think of Julia Cameron. I think of Natalie Goldberg. I think of Annie Dillard. I think that there are Madeleine L'Engle, who wrote A Swiftly Tilting Planet, and one more that's much more famous than that. She has a book on writing as well. And I think that there are a lot of parallels, Mary Oliver, to the way that writers speak about writing. I think there's almost like these universal truths about writing, the same way that there are universal truths about life. And so I don't think it's unusual to sort of find something that feels true, that is sort of spoken by many different authors.
Well said. How do I write positively about very traumatic, negative stories? Well, I think the reason you'd be writing is because you have a silver lining to share, and you have hope, and you have uh, the experience of prevailing against odds um, in daunting circumstances. And that would be such a gift for others now going through perhaps what you've survived, that bright light ought to be what keeps you going rather than being brought down again by living through it again, by writing about it again. Focus on the intention of the writing, which in this case, I think, since you asked, how can I write positively about it? This is probably not just journaling. You're wanting to write for other people's inspiration. And that's so beautiful in itself. Let that guide you through the difficult terrain and the reliving of unpleasant experiences. I hope that helps. Hope, anything on that?
I would just say that I think the very nature of writing is to lead us in a positive direction. I think that the very nature of writing is to lead us to the light. So I think it will happen naturally. I think if you start writing about your story, you might start in that traumatic, negative place, if that's where you are with it now. But just naturally, as a result of writing about it, it will lead you to the light.
Good luck. I mean, best wishes.
What is the thing you most enjoy about the process, Mike?
Not much. Like my mother would say, and if some of you know my work or been around Tut long enough, my mom was a big inspiration in my life, and she wrote books. She was not a famous writer by any stretch of the imagination, but she had about 5 books, one of which was picked up by a New York publisher and then a British publisher. And she would paraphrase another famous author. I think one of her favorite authors back in the day was Pearl Buck. And I think it was Pearl Buck who would say, I don't like writing, but I like having written. And I think maybe I got that from my mom. There are times when I can really get into the word and the narrative and kind of, putting it all together. I really like the short notes from the universe. I can be like a laser beam on, a paragraph for 4 hours, and then I'm burned out, and that's it. The thought of writing a big book that's 300 pages, that's always overwhelmed me. I don't know how I've done it, but I like having written much better than I like writing. I know that is probably the opposite for you.
Yeah, this is the part where you really see our differences, because I love everything about the process. But I also consider myself sort of a process person. I love everything about the process of everything. So I even wash my dishes by hand, even though I have a dishwasher, because I enjoy the process. So what do I enjoy most about it? I feel like when I write, I am in connection with the divine. I feel like I'm in connection with something greater than myself, something magical. And to me, that's like the most amazing thing in the world, to sort of be a conduit, or to feel like I'm bringing form to formlessness. I'm making something that is intangible tangible. Like, that is the most exciting thing to me. So I think for me, it's the relationship that I feel like I am working in tandem with the spirit, with something that is like unseen, mysterious, just like truly incredible and beyond this world.
You know what? I think that's going to wrap up our Q&A session. We are almost at the end of this workshop. Hope, what are you going to share next week when we go into publishing and more?
I will probably share a bit about editing, which I've spent 15 years or so doing a lot of editing all the notes from the universe that go out, and editing various people's books, and also working with my own editor. And I've seen a lot of questions in the Facebook group that people have about editing. So I want to share what I've learned about that. And I might also share my own process of self-publishing as well. What about you, Mike?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go more into my story and how it was starting in fits and stops, self-published and otherwise. Some of what I shared today already will be my starting point. And then I'll just share what I've learned about becoming published and what to value, what not to value, what to prioritize, what not to prioritize from the School of Hard Knocks. So it'll be mostly my story that will have a lot of spin-offs in terms of getting published and things to be on the lookout for. All right, we're about to sign off. I saw some of your comments, and many of you have already read Hope's book. I guess you got the ebook version at Amazon.com, and you are raving about it. I'm not surprised. You know what? If you feel inspired and you have the book and you like it, go put in a good word at Amazon.com in reviews. Those make such a difference. Hope would love to read them, and future buyers would like that as well. I think that wraps it up. Hope, any final words before we say adios?
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. It is truly a delight. I think you can see that Hope is in her element. She loves writing and everything about writing, and me getting to be with Hope and all of you, and Ivy in the background, and Gina and Carly in the background. Boy, oh boy, what a fairy tale life that writing has given me and can soon give you. So adios, amigos. See you next week. Tally ho.